Alright guys, welcome back to session 51 of Java Full Stack Made Easy. In previous session, the last thing that we spoke about was interpolation and events in Angular. So in this session, we'll be talking about the concept of data binding, which is one-way data binding and two-way data binding. So without wasting much of the time, let's get started with this particular session. So first of all, before I start up with a new thing, let's just do a ng serve to our previous example, and obviously hyphen o opens up it into the browser. So I'm starting ng serve. So in the last example we have seen a double click, a mouse enter the events, right, and the click event. So this is what we have seen, the calculate stuff. So it gets calculated, the sum gets calculated on mouse over and double click and the click event. So that is what we have seen in our previous session. So in this session we will talk about the concept of property binding in Angular once again, which is one way data binding. We will see what exactly a property binding is all about, and where can we make use of a property binding. So for that I'll go back to my app.html. So first of all, I'll just clean up everything that is written into the app.html. Fine. And also app.typescript, I have created two variables and everything. So I'll just clean up everything that I have created before. So which means that my app.typescript looks clean, and also my app.html looks clean as well. Fine. So there is nothing in app.typescript and app.html. So first, what I will do is in app.html, I'm going to create a very simple text box. So let me just create a simple text box, which is going to be an input type is equal to text. So I'm creating a input type is equal to text, and I want to give this text some value. So the moment I open up this browser, it should have some value in it. Let's say I want to give the value as hello in it. Similarly, what I would like to do is I would like to create another text box where I would like to bind the property and tell you exactly what property binding is all about. So let's talk about the concept of property binding here. Now first let me just save this and show you how it looks like on the browser. So the value, whatever value I'm giving, it is appearing in the text box, right? So I'm giving some value to my text box by using this property called as the value property. What I can also do in Angular is that I can create an input type text, and then this value, instead of giving this value directly, what I can do is I can go ahead and create a variable here, and based on that variable I can give the value to the text box. Like for example, I'd like to have some name over here, and then let's say Virat Kohli is something which I am creating. So I save this and I save this file as well. So both the files are saved. Now in the second text box, what I want to do is I want the value of name to be present here, right? So in the previous example, what we did was we did this, right? So which was an interpolation. So we used interpolation before. Now if I try to use interpolation, yes, it's fine. So interpolation is working, wherein the value I am just giving an interpolation. Fine. But what I want to do is I want to bind this property to that particular variable without using an interpolation. Interpolations are generally not recommended in cases like this. So what I want is I want the name to be displayed here, and for that we just use the square brackets to the value. Fine. So now by doing this, you will notice that the text box will have Virat Kohli being added there. So the property is added here by using property binding. So this is how we perform simple property binding. There can be various other uses of these type of property binding. For example, I cannot just bind this value property, I can bind any type of property. Like for example, in this case, when I was using an interpolation, I was giving the name value to the value property, right? Similarly, I will create another text box. Now what I want is I have another variable here. Let's create a variable and call it as a type variable. Fine. It can be named anything, or let's call it as my type or something. Okay. So let's call it as my type, and the my type variable, I want to give the value to my type as password. Okay, or maybe I want to give it as text. Fine. So I will save this, and I've created a type variable my type, and now this input type is equal to text. Once again, value will definitely have Virat Kohli, and instead of giving this input type as text, I want to give that previous value here, which is my type, right? So I'm using a my type, and I save it. Once again, I go to the browser, and now you can see that the value is added, and this is a text. Similarly, instead of marking it as a text, I mark this as a password, and I save it. And once again, I go here, and then you can see the type is also changed. So even the property binding, as I told you, not just this is not just done using interpolation, it can be done using a property binding as well. So now if I use a property binding, I can bind it to the type property as well. So likewise, any property that we have, we can bind it that way. Now we can change the property values during the runtime as well, because since these text boxes, these properties are bind to the value of the variable. So if the value of the variable changes, then the type should change, right? So for that, what I'm going to do is I will be creating a button. On click of that particular button, the value gets changed. So let's create a button and then change the value on click of this button. So we will use our previous sessions knowledge, that is events in Angular. So I'll create one function and call it as change val or something. Fine. So now what I want is I want to give some text to this particular button. So let's call it as hide or something. So let me save it. Now when I have this change val, it is actually giving me an error. That's because I'm trying to say that on click of this particular button, change val should be executed, where it does not find any function called as change val. So let's create a change val function here so that the error is gone. Fine. So you can see that previously it was showing me an error here. Now the error is gone. So what change val does, as for now, the type of my type is password. So I will change the my type initially to text. Fine, let's make it text by default. And when it comes to this particular function, and obviously as discussed before, every variable that we are using inside the function, it has to be used with this keyword. So what I'm doing is, now when somebody clicks on that particular button, my type should be changed to password. So let me save it now and show you the result. So now what happens is, this particular text box is of my concern, so I'll just put that text box after some few line breaks so that it will be easy for us to identify. So now you can see that this is the text box before, because the input type is set to text, not input type. It is actually the my text variable is set to text here first. Fine. Similarly, now upon click of this particular button, it changes to password. You can see that it changes to password. So the moment I click on hide, so this name gets hidden. So that is the magic of making use of the property binding. First of all, let me just share this example with you, and then I will enhance this example more. So let's go to the new repository for Angular, and here let's create the day 51 repository for us. So this is gonna be a day 51 slash demo 1. Let's call it as property binding. So again, it's a part of data binding itself. So in this case, it is like the topic of today's session is about one-way and two-way data binding. So this falls under a one-way data binding. So this file is obviously our app.html, and there are only two files in this example. I'm changing app.html and app.typescript. Fine. So for all the demonstrations that I'm showing, I'm using the same project that I created in session 1 of Angular. You can create separate projects for every single demo, or if you wish to create more components, you can create more components as discussed in the previous sessions by generating new components. So if you remember, we generated the components by using ng ngc, that is ng generate component name. Now what I want is the change val function that I had created uh, had something like a hide, right? So I want to enhance this. Like there is a hide button. Upon click of this button, it has to show and it has to hide on click of this same button. That's what I want to include. I can obviously create another button, and then upon click of that I can change it to text, but I want it on the same button. So let's see how do we do that. Fine. So changing it on two separate buttons would be far more easier, but I want to change it on the same button. So what we are going to implement now, so what we are going to do is we are just going to check if the type of this my type is text, change it to password. If it is password, then change it to text. So that's what I want to do. So if, let's include that, if the type, which is this dot my type, equal to text, then change it to password. In an else case, this dot my type will be equal to text. So if when it is password, it will be changed to text. If it is text, it will be changed to password. So that's what I have written. So let's say just save it and see how things work there. So now it is text, it will be changed to password. If I click on this again, it changes to text. So that way we can make use of this concept of property binding. Fine. So let me just share this example as well with you. Fine. So in this case, what I did was, upon click of the same button, I'm changing it to text and I'm changing the same thing to password again. So let me share this with you. So I'll copy this and put this into the repository as well. So let's call it as demo2 again, property binding. Fine. Demo2 property binding. Fine. So this is once again our app.typescript and app.html. So this is the TypeScript file and then the app.html. So I'm giving you both the files into one file itself. So as I recommend you always, do not directly copy paste all the TypeScript and everything. For HTML, you can definitely copy paste, no problem with the HTML. But with the TypeScript, there might be, you might encounter some problems when you copy and paste the entire code. Fine. So now in this example, it's fine. When I click on this hide, show, everything is happening fine. But then the text of this button that is written as hide, it is not changing to show, right? So what has to happen is definitely what I intended to do was change the type of this text box to type text and type password. That is happening, but along with that I also want the caption of this button to be changed. So what can we do to change the caption in that in this case? So it's pretty simple. Once again, what you can simply do is instead of giving a static caption here, that is hide, so what you do is you give some uh, variable here. Let's call it as button caption or maybe a button text. Fine. So this button text as for now is gonna be uh, hide, which is visible, right? So let's create it, let's call it as hide. And then what we are gonna simply do is whenever the button's type is password, then change the caption to show. If it is text, change it to hide again. Fine. So since it is multiple lines, so I'm gonna change that. So in this case, it has to be the button text equals to when it is password, make it show, and when it is text, make it hide. So by default it was text, so that's why I made it hide here. And whenever it becomes a text, make the caption as hide. So automatically even the caption gets changed the moment you click on the button. So let's go to the browser and see now. See, if I click on hide, it's gone. Okay, sorry. So I have to also save this file. You can see that how many files are not saved. So let me just refresh this. Now if I click on hide, it goes into a text input type as password. When the input type is password, the caption becomes show. When I click on that, the caption changes to hide. So that way you can play along with your property binding. So obviously I now feel that looks pretty interesting, right? So hide and show. So you can also do a lot other things with this. Fine. So first let me just put this into the repository, and after that we'll talk about the other things. Fine. So demo 3, change caption and type. This is my HTML file, which is app.html, and then app.typescript. All right. So now that we are aware about how to perform this concept of property binding, where we are binding the value property and also the type property of an input. Fine. So we change the input to text and password, and the value to Virat Kohli, the variable. Fine. So now what I want is I would like to have uh, maybe I'll create a variable that is Virat Kohli or something. So that particular variable which I have created, I want that variable to be changed. Fine. So let us see is that thing possible or not. So I have a variable here. So let me just first clean up everything that I have written, and once again we'll see how things work when I clean up everything. So once again I have cleaned my TypeScript which has nothing as for now, and also I will clean up my HTML so that it'll be easier for us to understand the next concept. So what I'm gonna do is I will now uh, take up input type once again, which is gonna be of type text, and I'm gonna bind the value here. Fine. So the value will be the name that I have kept as it is. So value is gonna be the name, so which does not change. Fine. So I kept that as it is. Now what I will do is I will also create a button here. Fine. And upon click of that button, I'd first like to simply change the value. Fine. So let's see how do we do that. So here I'm gonna create a button, and upon click of this particular button, I'd like to call up a function. Maybe I would like to call a function called as change value function. Fine. So let's call it as change, that is the caption of a button, and let's go to the TypeScript and create a function like that. And as of now what I'll do is I'll just put up an alert on this. So on upon click of that button, I'd like to display the name. Okay, so let's save it, and obviously it has to be a this dot name. So let's save it, and let's save this as well. So what we have done is the name value, which is actually Virat Kohli, coming up from TypeScript, we are displaying that on an HTML page, right? uh, you can see that. So this value name is actually displayed on an HTML. So let's go to the browser and see that. So that value is actually bind here, the property is bind. So upon click of this change, what am I doing is I am just alerting the name. So let's see that first. When I click on this, it shows me Virat Kohli. That's fine. Now what I'm gonna do is upon click of the button, I'm gonna change something, that is this dot name will be equal to something else. Maybe let's say Rohit. Okay, and after changing that particular name, I want to alert that. So let's save it, and now when I click on that change, it becomes Rohit. So I'm able to change the type, right? So that means the name, I'm able to change it. Now what I want to do is I want the user to give me the name in this text box. Like I don't want to write that name Rohit and Virat here. So what I want is obviously that particular name is bind to this text box, right? So if I write something like Pandya here and click on that change, I want Pandya to be displayed here. But the problem here is that it is only displaying me Virat Kohli. It is not changing the value to Panda. If I click on OK and click on change again, you can still see that it is Virat Kohli itself. So the value of the variable is not actually changing, although we are binding that name to this particular text box. So let us understand what is the problem here. So what we basically have is we have two files. There's one TypeScript file and there is one HTML file here. And in the TypeScript file, we have a variable called as name there. And on an HTML, we have a text box. So this is the text box, and this name is actually bind to this particular text box HTML. Now the value of this name is Virat. Fine. Kohli. And when we are performing a data binding, so Virat Kohli is being displayed here. So up to here it was working perfectly fine. But what we wanted was, we wanted when a user gives some value over here, that is maybe let's say a user types in Pandya or something, we wanted the value of this to be given back to the variable name, which is not happening in our case, right? So if you analyze that, this thing is not happening, wherein we are trying to get the value from the user and give it back to the TypeScript. So there is only one type of one-way data binding is happening. So this concept itself is called as one-way data binding, where the data from TypeScript is bind to HTML. The value changed in TypeScript is reflecting to HTML, but the value changed in HTML is not reflecting to TypeScript. So here you can see, if I go and change it directly in the TypeScript, it is reflecting. You can see that if I click on change, it changes to Rohit and it is reflected to this particular text box. Because in this case also I'm changing the value in TypeScript, I'm not changing the value in HTML. So which basically means what? Whatever is changed in TypeScript is reflected to HTML, but any changes made in HTML is not reflected back to the TypeScript. So that's the problem when it comes to one-way data binding. So this is just one-way data binding. Now if there is any need of performing two-way data binding, what has to be done? So first of all, I will give you this particular problem that I am facing here. I'm able to change this, but when I comment on this and if I try to take this particular value and try to change it, that's not happening. So first I will put up a problem so that you understand that why did we include two-way data binding into our uh, examples. Fine. So let's call it as demo for problem with one way data binding. So what is the problem? The value changed in TypeScript is getting reflected to HTML, whereas value changed in HTML is not reflected back to the TypeScript. So this is our app.typescript and the below file is app.html. So any value changed in app.typescript gets changed, whereas if I try and type a text into the text box and try and check whether that value gets reflected here, it's not changing that. So what you can do is you can uncomment that value and test it again, and then you can type in something into the text box and test it, and you will understand the problem present into the concept of one-way data binding. Now how do I solve this particular problem, wherein I also want whatever is changed in the text box should be reflected back to the name? How will I solve this problem? So to resolve this problem, we have to introduce something called as two-way data binding. So two-way data binding has to be included into our Angular. So let us now understand how do we include two-way data binding. So for two-way data binding, we need to have a ngModel. Now how do we include ngModel, and from where ngModel is coming up, and what is the syntax of having an ngModel? Let us understand everything one by one. So what all we would need is we would need a ngModel which will bind the value of using two-way data binding, and also we would like to when we are including this ngModel, so it's module, so it has to be included now. So this ngModel is actually a part of forms module, so which has to be imported by us. So if we want to make use of ngModel, then we need a forms module. So let us now try and see how do we include, or let's say how do we import the modules. How do we import Angular modules? So let's go ahead and understand that. So first of all, instead of using the value, what we have to use is we have to use ngModel. The moment I try and use ngModel, it's gonna give me an error. And also notice the syntax of the ngModel. So we have to take square brackets, and within that we have to take the brackets. And to remember this, you can remember it as banana in a box. So this looks like banana and this looks like a box. So most of the people are actually confused with this syntax. So to remember the syntax, you can remember this phase called as bananas in a box and use a ngModel there. So when you try and use an ngModel, you will start getting the errors because Angular will not be able to understand what is that ngModel all about, right? So it is an unknown it's not a known property. So to make it known property, it's actually a part of forms module, right? So we have to tell Angular that we are going to make use of this ngModel from forms module. So you better import it from there. So how will we tell our application to import the forms module? So here comes the usage of our app.module.typescript. So this is again the file that I am changing now. If you remember, when I created a component, I added this component to Bootstrap so that I can directly place this component on the index.html. Similarly, now in this file, if you look at this TypeScript file, you will notice that it has a section called as imports, and in this imports array I have to include the forms module. Fine, so let's include the forms module here. So the moment I include this forms module, you will notice that there is an import happening at the top, which is import forms module from Angular forms. So you can see that here. So import forms module from Angular. So you have to import it at the top, and also you have to include it in the imports array. So the moment we use this, what will happen is the error that we were encountering, that it is not a known property, will be gone, because now it is a known property. The ngModel is actually a part of the forms module. So by doing that, we have resolved the problem that we have encountered into our one-way data binding. Now how can we say that we have resolved that particular problem? So let us understand that. So I am performing an alert. Let's go ahead and see whether the problem is resolved or not. So when I click on this change, so I'm getting that Virat Kohli looks good. Now let's type in something here, Rohit, and click on change and see, yeah, Rohit is being displayed. Now I write something like Pandya and I click on this change, and you can see that the Pandya is displayed. So this is the magic of two-way data binding. What I can also do is I can simply add up that particular text here with my interpolations, and then just take this name, and you can see that the value getting changed in real time. So Panda is written there. I remove everything is gone from there, and whatever I write here, let's write Pant, you will see that Pant is being displayed. You write Rishabh, it will be displayed there. You write Siraj, that will be displayed there. So this is how you use two-way data binding, and that's the magic of two-way data binding. So for two-way data binding, do remember that you have to include the forms module in app.module.typescript. So let me give you all three files that I have modified. So very first thing that I have modified is app.typescript. So let me share this with you. Now the problem of one-way data binding is solved in two-way data binding. So demo 5, two-way data binding. So what was the problem in one-way data binding? The problem was the data from TypeScript was actually bind to the HTML, but the HTML data was not reflected back to the TypeScript. So that was the problem in one-way data binding, which is resolved in the two-way data binding by including the forms module. So app.html. So here in this case you have to change three files, that is the HTML, app.html, app.typescript, and app-module.typescript. So this is the new file that has to be changed, which is app-module.typescript. Fine. So if you are creating Angular projects, as I shown you in the first example where I used a no stand alone flag, That's why I was able to see this ng app dash module dot typescript. Else you will see only the component and you have to generate the app dot module dot typescript on your own. Fine. So I hope you have enjoyed this particular session. In the next upcoming sessions, we will be talking more about the two-way data binding and the other concepts of Angular, the concept of binding, other type of binding, that is the style bindings and all, in our next session. So stay connected. See you in the next video. Thank you.